Hello everyone, myself Dr. Harpreet Kaur from Army Institute of Law, and I'll be discussing with you the topic of right to education and right against exploitation. Introducing you the topic. Right to education and right against exploitation are two fundamental rights enshrined in the Constitution of India. They are essential for ensuring the dignity and welfare of every citizen of India. Right to education is the right of every child to receive free and compulsory education of good quality up to the age of 14 years. It is based on the principle that education is a basic human right and a means of empowerment and social justice. The right to education was made a fundamental right by the 86th Amendment Act of 2002, which inserted Article 21A in the Constitution. The right of children to free and compulsory education of Act of 2009, also known as RTE Act, is the legislation that operationalized the right to education in India. The RTE Act lays down the norms and standards for the provision of education such as teachers' qualification, pupil-teacher ratio, infrastructure, curriculum, etc. It also mandates the reservation of 25% seats in private schools for children belonging to disadvantaged group and weaker sections. Right against exploitation is the right of every person to be protected from any form of forced labor, trafficking, slavery, servitude, or similar practices. It is based on the principle that every person has inherent dignity and freedom and should not be subjected to any kind of exploitation or abuse. The right against exploitation is guaranteed by Article 23 and Article 24 of the Constitution. Article 23 prohibits traffic in human beings and other form of forced labor and provides for punishment for violating this provision. Article 24 prohibits the employment of children below the age of 14 years in any factory, mine or other hazardous occupation and provides for a penalty for contravening this provision. The Bonded Labour System Abolition Act of 1976, the Immoral Traffic Prevention Act of 1956, the Child Labour Prohibition and Regulation Act of 1986 and the Trafficking of Person Prevention, Protection and Rehabilitation Bill of 2018 are some of the laws that aims to prevent and combat exploitation in India. Both right to education and right against exploitation are crucial for the realization of the goals of democracy, development and human rights in India. They are interrelated and interdependent, as education can help to prevent and resist exploitation, and exploitation can hinder and hamper education. Therefore, it is imperative to ensure the effective implementation and enforcement of these rights for the benefits of the people and the nation. Constitutional and legal framework of the right to education. The right to education in India is a fundamental right that guarantees free and compulsory education for all children between the age of 6 and 14 years. The constitutional and legal framework of the rights to education in India consists of the following. First, the Constitution of India, which is the supreme law of the land, provides the basis for the right to education in India. Article 21A, inserted by the 86th Amendment Act of 2002, states that the state shall provide free and compulsory education to all children of the age of 6 to 14 years in such manner as the state may by law determine. The right of children to free and compulsory education Act of 2009, also known as RTE Act, is the legislation that operationalizes the right to education in India. It lays down the norms and standards for the provision and quality of education such as teachers' qualification, pupil-teacher ratio, infrastructure, curriculum, etc. It also mandates the reservation of 25% seats in private schools for children belonging to disadvantaged group and weaker section. It also specifies the duty and responsibilities of the appropriate government, local authorities, parents and schools in providing and ensuring free and compulsory education for all children. The National Education Policy of 2020, also known as NEP 2020, is the latest policy document that outlines the vision and goals of the education system in India. It aims to transform the education system to meet the needs and aspirations of the 21st century. It proposes several reforms and innovations in the areas of curriculum, pedagogy, assessment, teacher education, governance, financing, etc. It also envisages the extension of the right to education from pre-primary to secondary level and universalization of access, participation and learning outcomes for all children. Now, I will be discussing challenges and achievements. Education is a basic human right and a means of empowerment and social justice. However, the implementation of the right to education in India faces many challenges and also has some achievement. Here are some of the main challenges and achievement in this field. The challenges are inadequate infrastructure. Many schools lack proper classrooms, libraries, laboratories and other essential facilities, making it difficult for students to receive a quality education. Insufficient schools and overcrowded classrooms further exacerbate the problem, limiting the number of students who can access education. Distance and transportation. In rural areas, students often have to travel long distance to reach the nearest school, which poses challenge in terms of transportation, safety and time management. This issue particularly affects girls and students from economically disadvantaged background, as their family may not have the means to support their education. Socio-economic barriers. Many families struggle to afford the cost associated with schooling, such as textbooks, uniform, transportations and other educational materials. This financial burden often leads to children being forced to work or support their families instead of attending school. Discrimination and social norm can also play a role in limiting access to education, particularly for marginalized group. Quality of education. The quality of education in India varies widely across the region, schools and teachers. There are issues of teachers' absenteeism, low qualification, poor training and inadequate assessment. The curriculum and pedagogy are often outdated, rigid and irrelevant to the needs and interest of the student. The learning outcomes and achievements of the students are often low and unequal. Inclusivity and diversity. The education system in India does not adequately cater to the diverse needs and backgrounds of the student. There are gaps in the provision of education for children with disabilities, linguistic minorities, tribal communities and other vulnerable groups. There are also issues of gender disparities, caste discrimination and religious intolerance in the schools. The education system does not promote the values of pluralism, tolerance and respect of human rights. Achievements. The Right to Education Act, a 2009 law that ensures free and compulsory education for children aged 6 to 14 years. It sets the norm and standards for education quality and inclusivity and reserves 25% seats in private schools for disadvantaged children. The National Education Policy, a 2020 policy that outlines the vision and goals of the education system in India. It proposes reforms and innovation in curriculum, pedagogy, assessment, teacher education, governance, financing, etc. It also extends the right to education from pre-primary to secondary level and aim to universalize access, participation and learning outcomes for all children. Initiatives and schemes. Various programs that have been implemented by the government and other agencies to improve the access and quality of education in India. Some of these are Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, the Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan, the Mid-Day Meal Scheme, the Beti Bachao Beti Padhao Scheme, the Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, the Digital India Program, etc. These programs provides infrastructure, resources, incentives and opportunities for the students, teachers and schools to enhance the education system. International perspective on right to education. First is Canada. Canada has a decentralized education system where each province and territory has its own authority and responsibility for education. There is no federal department or ministry of the education in Canada. The education system in Canada is generally divided into 4 levels: elementary, secondary, post-secondary and adult education. The education system in Canada prioritizes practical and experiential learning and encourages critical thinking, creativity and problem solving skill. The education system in Canada is also inclusive and diverse and respect the linguistic, cultural and religious diversity of the student. Next is USA. The USA has a decentralized education system where each state and local district has its own authority and responsibility for education. The education system in USA is generally divided into 4 levels: elementary, middle, high and post-secondary. The education system in the USA prioritizes practical and experimental learning and encourages critical thinking, creativity and problem solving skills. The education system in USA is also inclusive and diverse and respects the linguistic, cultural and religious diversity of the students. The USA has the best surveyed education system on the globe according to the Best Countries report, but its students consistently score lower in math and science than the students from many other countries. The UK has a unified education system, but each of the 4 constituent countries, England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, has its own variation and devolved parts. The education system in the UK is generally divided into 4 stages: primary, secondary, further and higher. The education system in the UK emphasizes the importance of academic excellence and standardized testing and prepares the students for the national examination such as GCSEs and the A levels. The education system in the UK is also flexible and individualized and allows the students to choose their own subjects and qualifications. The UK has the 6th ranked education system in the world according to the OECD, and its universities are amongst the most prestigious and renowned in the world. Next is Africa. Africa is a continent with 24 countries, each with its own education system and policies. Therefore, it is difficult to generalize the education system in Africa. However, some common features and challenges can be identified. The education system in Africa is usually divided into 3 levels: primary, secondary and tertiary. The education system in Africa is influenced by the colonial legacy, the cultural diversity and the socio-economic conditions of the continent. The education system in Africa faces many challenges such as low enrollment, high dropout, poor quality, inadequate infrastructure, insufficient funding and unequal access. The education system in Africa also strives to achieve many goals such as universal literacy, gender parity, cultural relevance and sustainable development. China has a centralized education system where the Ministry of Education is the highest authority and sets the national curriculum and standards. The education system in China is generally divided into 3 stages: basic, secondary and higher. The education system in China is based on the principle of meritocracy and competition. The education system in China emphasizes the importance of hard work, discipline and achievement and prepares students for the high stakes entrance examination such as GAECO. The education system in China also fosters a culture of innovation and collaboration and promotes the value of patriotism and socialism. A right against exploitation legal framework. The right against exploitation is a fundamental right that protects every person from any form of forced labor, trafficking, slavery, servitude or similar practices. It is based on the principle that every person has inherent dignity and freedom and should not be subjected to any kind of exploitation or abuse. The Grand Norm of India, that is the Constitution of India, provides the basis of the right against exploitation in India. Article 23 and 24 of the Constitution guarantees the right against exploitation. Article 23 bans traffic in human being and other form of forced labor and punishes the violators. Article 24 bans the employment of children below 14 years in any hazardous work and penalizes the offenders. These articles protect citizens from both the state and private citizens. The state is obliged to protect citizens from these evils by taking punitive and positive actions. Under Article 35 of the Constitution, the Parliament can enact laws to punish the act prohibited by Article 23 and 24. The law passed by the Parliament in pursuance of Article 23 and Article 24 are legislation that operationalizes the right against exploitation in India. Some of these laws are the Bonded Labour System Abolition Act of 1976, which abolishes the bonded labour system and frees the bonded labour from any obligation to render any service arising out of a debt or custom. The Immoral Traffic Prevention Act of 1956, which prevents trafficking of persons, especially the women and children, for the purpose of prostitution or other immoral activities. The Child Labour Prohibition and Regulation Act of 1986, which prohibits the exploitation of children in certain occupations and processes and regulates the condition of work of children in other occupation and processes. The Trafficking of Person Prevention, Protection and Rehabilitation Bill of 2018, which aims to prevent and counter trafficking in persons, especially women and children, and provide for their care, protection and rehabilitation. Forms of exploitation. Exploitation is a serious violation of human right and dignity, and it affects millions of people in India. Exploitation can take various forms such as human trafficking, bonding labor, child labor, etc. Here are some facts and figures about the prevalence and form of exploitation in India. Human trafficking. Human trafficking is the trade of humans for the purpose of forced labor, sexual exploitation or other illegal activities. According to National Crime Record Bureau, 8 children were trafficked every day in India in 2021 for labor, begging and sexual exploitation. 95% of the reported cases in 2019 were of internal trafficking, where victims were moved within the country. The main destinations for trafficking were Maharashtra, West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka and Delhi. The main sources of trafficking were Bihar, Assam, West Bengal, Jharkhand and UP. The main form of trafficking were domestic labor, forced child labor across industries and commercial sexual exploitation. Trafficked children face all forms of abuse, physical, mental, sexual and emotional. Bonded labor. Bonded labor is a system of labor where people, including children, work under conditions of servitude to pay off a debt or custom. According to Global Slavery Index 2018, India has the highest number of people living in conditions of modern slavery, with an estimated 8 million victims of bonded labor. The main sectors where bonded labor is prevalent are agriculture, brick kilns, carpet weaving, stone quarries, mining and construction. The main cause of bonded labor are poverty, illiteracy, social discrimination and lack of legal protection. Bonded laborers are subjected to physical violence, sexual abuse and deprivation of basic needs. Child labor. Child labor is the employment of children in any work that deprives them of their childhood potential and dignity and physical or mental development. According to the census of 2011, there were 10.1 million child laborers in India, of which 8.1 million were in rural areas and 2 million were in urban areas. The main sectors where child labor is found are agriculture, manufacturing services and household work. The main reasons for child labor are poverty, lack of education, social norms and family expectations. Child labor affects the health, education and development of children and exposes them to exploitation and abuse. Causes and consequences of exploitation. Exploitation is a serious violation of human rights and dignity, and it affects millions of people in India. Exploitation can take various forms such as human trafficking, bonded labor, child labor, etc. The causes and consequences of exploitation in India are as follows. Causes. There are many factors that contribute to the occurrence and persistence of exploitation in India, such as poverty. Poverty is one of the main causes of exploitation, as it forces people to work in degrading and hazardous conditions for survival. Poverty also makes people vulnerable to deception, coercion and violence by traffickers and exploiters who offer them false promises of better opportunity. Illiteracy. Illiteracy is another cause of exploitation, as it limits the access and awareness of people to their rights and entitlements. Illiterate people are more likely to be exploited by employers, contractors and middlemen who cheat them to their wages, benefits, freedom. Illiterate people are also less likely to seek legal recourse or assistance when they face exploitation. Social discrimination. Social discrimination based on caste, gender, religion or other factors is also a cause of exploitation, as it marginalizes and excludes certain group of people from the mainstream society and economy. Discriminated people are often denied equal opportunities, resources and services and are subjected to stigma, prejudice and violence. Discriminated people are also more prone to exploitation by dominant group who exploit their labor, sexuality or identity. Consequences. There are many negative impacts of exploitation on individual, social and national level, such as health. Exploitation affects the physical and mental health of the victim, as they are exposed to violence, abuse and deprivation of basic needs. Exploitation can also lead to injuries, diseases, disabilities and death. Exploitation also increases the risk of HIV or AIDS and other sexually transmitted infections, especially among trafficked and sexually exploited persons. Education. Exploitation affects the education and development of children, as they are forced to work instead of going to school. Exploitation deprives children of their right to education and undermines their potential and dignity. Exploitation also affects the quality and equity of education, as exploited children often lag behind in learning outcomes and achievements. Economy. Exploitation affects the economy and development of the nation, as it reduces the productivity and income of labor force. Exploitation also creates a very vicious cycle of poverty and inequality, as exploited people are unable to escape their situation and improve their living standard. Exploitation also undermines the rule of law and the human rights of the citizen. However, there are many challenges and gaps in the implementation and enforcement of these laws, such as lack of awareness, resources, political will, social norm, etc. Therefore, it is necessary to take concreted and coordinated efforts by government, the civil society, the media, the judiciary, the educational institution and the people themselves to ensure that these forms of exploitations are eradicated and prevented from the country. Measures and initiative by governmental agencies. Exploitation is a serious violation of human rights and dignity, and it affects millions of people in India. Exploitation can take various forms such as human trafficking, bonded labor, child labor, etc. The government and other agencies have taken several measures and initiatives to prevent and combat exploitation in India. Some of these are the Criminal Law Amendment Act 2013 and the Criminal Law Amendment Act 2018, which have enacted more stringent penal provisions, including death penalty for offences related to sexual exploitation, especially of children. The Emergency Response Support System, which provides a pan-India single internationally recognized number 112 for all emergencies, including cases of exploitation. The Safety City project, which have been sanctioned in 8 cities to use technology to aid smart policing and safety management, especially for women and children. The Cybercrime portal, which enables citizens to report obscene content and sexual offences online. the national database on sexual offenders, which facilitate investigation and trafficking of sexual offenders across the country by law enforcement agencies. The investigation trafficking system for sexual offences, which monitors and tracks time-bound investigation in sexual assault cases in accordance with the law. The one-stop center scheme, which provides integrated services such as medical aid, police assistance, legal counselling, psychosociology counselling and temporary shelter by women affected by violence. The Bonded Labour System Abolition Act 1976, which abolishes the bonded labour system and frees the bonded labourers from any obligation to render any services arising out of a debt or custom. The Immoral Traffic Prevention Act 1956, which prevents the trafficking of persons, especially women and children, for the purpose of prostitution or other immoral activities. The Child Labour Prohibition and Regulation Act 1986, which prohibits the employment of children in certain occupation and processes and regulate the condition of work of children in other occupation and processes. The Trafficking of Persons Prevention, Protection and Rehabilitation Bill of 2018, which aims to prevent and counter trafficking in persons, especially women and children, and provide for their care and protection and rehabilitation. The Pencil Portal, which ensure effective enforcement of child labour laws and end the child labour. The Right to Education Act 2009, which makes it mandatory for the states to ensure that all children aged 6 to 14 years are in school and receive free education. The various initiatives and schemes such as Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, the Rashtriya Shiksha Abhiman, the Midday Meal Scheme, the Beti Bachao Beti Padhao Andolan, the Samagra Shiksha Abhiman are the Digital India program, which aim to provide infrastructure, resource, incentives and opportunities for student, teachers and school to enhance the education system and prevent exploitation. Awareness and education. Awareness and education are two key factors that can empower the victims and potential victims of exploitation in India. Awareness and education can help them in the following way. Awareness is the state of being informed and conscious about the issue and reality of exploitation. Awareness can help the victim and potential victim of exploitation in India by enabling them to recognize and report the signs and symptoms of exploitation such as deception, coercion, violence, abuse and deprivation of basic need. Empowering them to assert and claim their right and entitlements such as freedom, dignity and justice and protection under the Constitution and various laws. Encouraging them to seek and access the available services and support such as legal aid, medical aid, counselling, rehabilitation and compensation. Inspiring them to join and participate in the movement and campaign against exploitation such as Bachpan Bachao Andolan, the Shakti Vahini and the Kailash Satre Children Foundation. Education. Education is the process of acquiring and imparting knowledge and skills for personal and social development. Education can help the victim and potential victim of exploitation in India by enhancing their literacy and numeracy skill, which can improve their access and awareness to their rights and entitlement and also increase their employability and income. Developing their critical thinking and problem solving skill, which can enable them to analyze and challenge the causes and consequences of exploitation such as poverty, illiteracy, social discrimination, etc. Fostering their creativity and innovative skill, which can help them to explore and pursue their interest and aspiration and also contribute to the society and the nation. Nurturing their values and attitudes, which can promote their respect and appreciation of human rights and dignities and also foster the spirit of solidarity and cooperation among the people. These are some of the ways that awareness and education can empower the victim and potential victim of exploitation in India. Awareness and education are essential for individual growth, social progress and national development. Therefore, it is necessary to ensure that every person has the opportunity to receive quality awareness and education and to realize their full potential. I am concluding this topic by saying that right to education and right against exploitation are two fundamental rights that are essential for the dignity and welfare of every citizen of India. They are also important for the development and progress of the nation. However, these rights are not fully realized and enjoyed by many people in India, especially the poor, the marginalized and the vulnerable. There are many challenges and obstacles in the implementations and enforcement of these rights, such as lack of resources, awareness, political will, social norms, etc. Therefore, it is necessary to take concerted and coordinated effort by the government, the civil society, the media, the judiciary, the educational institution and the people themselves to ensure that these rights are respected, protected and fulfilled for all. Only then can India achieve its vision of becoming a democratic, secular, socialist republic that guarantees justice, liberty, equality and fraternity to all its citizens. I hope you liked the lecture. Thank you and have a nice day.